GOP House Speaker John Boehner is making progress with President Obama on the fiscal cliff negotiations, but is it a deal the American people can live with? I'm Steve Green. This is my head cold, and this is also Trifecta. And here to answer that question and more, of course, Scott Ott and Bill Whittle. All right, gents, in the Washington Post on Monday, Ezra Klein reported that the two sides are close to an agreement on tax hikes for the wealthy, probably those making $400K and up, and that's in exchange for reducing increases in Social Security by recalculating how payments will be adjusted for inflation. And of course, we'll avoid the sequester and the universal tax hikes and all the rest of the fiscal cliff. Scott, is that such a bad deal?
I'm not sure people even know what the deal is anymore. And this is what I mean. There comes a point in a negotiation, if you spend too much time with the back and forth, you lose perspective. You lose your intention going into the process. You forget why you're there in the first place. And I would love to see Speaker Boehner dial this back and say, wait a minute. What is it again that we stand for, and how is this best accomplished? And can we possibly take a stand that's not based on what the president is throwing at us, but based upon what we most truly believe? Not be jerks about it, not be intransigent, but just say, look, this is the outcome that we're trying to accomplish. This is how we believe it can be accomplished. We're open to discussing other ways of getting to that outcome, but we can't keep going back and forth with you like this until, Boehner's head is spinning around doing a 360, and we no longer know why we're in this.
Well, I had an exorcist joke that I'm not going to use. All right, Bill, here's what gets stuck in my throat. The real sticking point is that the president is demanding another $200 billion just in the next year, another $200 billion in fresh stimulus spending. Now, if I'm doing my math right, that's almost 4-to-1 increased spending or increased taxes to increase spending. No, it is the other way around. Is that the balanced approach we were promised? More of everything?
Steve, I'm pretty sure I speak on behalf of the American people when I say I just don't care anymore. I just don't care anymore. I really don't. I think most people, certainly I bet you half of the country, the conservative half of the country, and I bet you most people, if you really got down and asked them, would tell you that we have as much chance of getting out of trouble with these people as we've got of, walking to the moon. It's just not going to happen. We are not going to get out of our financial troubles with these people. Everybody knows it's not going to happen. Now, looking at that picture a moment ago of Boehner and Obama sitting there, it reminded me of what you see when you drive past Men's Warehouse. A couple of empty suits looking at each other, posed in professional positions with nice ties that are utterly, completely, morally, intellectually, spiritually, competently hollow. Just utterly hollow suits going through the motions while the train goes hurtling off the cliff at full speed. And what you're saying, basically, to actually make an attempt to answer your question is, we're not even talking, forget about turning the train around anymore. We're not even talking about slowing the train down anymore. We're talking about what rate are we going to accelerate off the cliff. That's really what we're talking about right now.
All right, and as everyone knows, one doesn't simply walk to the moon.
No.
Scott, here's why I think no matter what deal comes out, the American people are going to lose. Now, writing for Bloomberg, Reason's Nick Gillespie and Vernie DeRuge, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, they report that Boehner has called for only $800 billion in spending cuts and Obama $400 billion, most of which would be pushed off until 2022 or later, tantamount to saying they won't happen at all. Scott, if Boehner won't stand up for us, who will?
We will. And I don't mean the three of us. I mean the people of this country. I mean the people who are watching this right now and the people who don't even hear our voices right now. People are finally going to get sick of this nonsense. I mean, we're not even talking about spending cuts at all. Those kind of numbers that they're throwing out there, that's over a period of a decade. These aren't real spending cuts on a budget that's $3.8 trillion a year, that's already overspending by more than $1 trillion a year, what we have coming in. This is a joke. This is a clown car. And these guys just keep cycling in and out of the car, and we think something's actually happening, but it isn't. And frankly, I'm just sick of it. I agree with Bill. I think that the American people are sick of listening to this, and I would love to hear John Boehner propose something radical like, hey, let's start measuring federal government departments by whether or not they're accomplishing the purpose for which they were established, for example. And if we have a $25 or $50 billion department like energy or education that's not actually accomplishing its purpose, let's get rid of it. There's some spending cuts for you.
Oh, just start chopping them down. Bill, I was listening to Rush last week, and he said something that made this whole mess make sense to me. Now, since Obama is not in any way serious about getting our spending in line, What he needs is Republican fingerprints on yet another kick-the-can bargain so he can spread the blame around a little bit. So is Boehner a fool for even playing, or does he have to at least appear like he's trying to negotiate in good faith?
We've had this discussion a couple times on Trifecta, Steve, this idea of letting it burn, right, about walking away from this and saying, since we can't stop these catastrophic policies, let the American people have the consequences of them. In order for that to work, you have to have a Speaker of the House who is forceful, clear, and morally sound, who comes out every single time he's on television. Mr. Speaker, tell us about this current situation with this giant storm ravaging the Gulf of Mexico. Well, as the storm comes ashore, this is day 429 of the Republicans basically saying we're going to vote. You know what I mean? You've got to hammer the fact that they are going to get their way and the consequences will be theirs. This man isn't the man for that. He seems like a good man. I don't have any, he strikes me as a guy who loves the country. But beyond that, Steve, what kind of leadership trumpet is John Boehner blowing? Does anybody have any clear understanding of what his strategy is? Does anybody have any clear understanding of what his objective is? I don't. I don't think anybody has any idea of what his objective is. I don't have a clue. And this is not the kind of time for an opposition party to be wandering around just generally scuffing its feet and trying to figure out what to do. You either rule and govern, or I should say govern, it was just getting used to the new normal when I said rule. You should either govern, or you should be able to be prepared to explain to the people why the people that are governing are doing a terrible job. And I don't think John Boehner can do either of these two things.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it. You know, folks, there's some good news here for once, maybe just a tiny sliver of it. FreedomWorks reported on Tuesday morning that Boehner has told the GOP to prepare for Plan B. That's to push through a bill through the House, raising taxes on incomes of over $1 million and maybe some temporary fixes on the AMT and some death tax relief. There's no cave-in on the debt limit, no cave-in on new stimulus spending. Just put the ball in the Democrats' court and see what they do with it. Plan B, well, it's not a great plan, but I suppose it's better than what we've seen so far. But, Mr. Speaker, if you do decide to cave, especially on the debt ceiling, and you're back home over the holidays, I want you to think hard. I want you to think really hard now about whether you should come back. For PJTV, I'm Steve Green.